So in this video we're looking at the financial impact of Covid-19 on sport. Yes, that's the coronavirus. I've chosen the NBA to look at, the NRL, the NHL and the English Premiership. And we're going to have a good discussion. Things are going to have to change in professional sport going forward. These leagues are going to have to change how things are run somewhat. I think the NHL is going to be the least affected out of the four leagues, ironically. I think they're the league that's probably most likely to get back to normal the quickest and have a normal schedule going forward, and then they're not going to be overly affected after this year. But the other sports, there's going to be massive knock-on impacts for a long time to come. We're going to start with the NBA. Now, the NBA are losing approximately around 450 million from lost ticket sales and lost gate revenue. So that's people going to the games and buying tickets on the night, or prepaid tickets or season tickets. They've lost 450 million so far. They're approximating, while the league is on hold. We're not including playoffs in this. Now, 3 out of the 4 leagues have playoffs. It's interesting to note, playoff losses are hard to predict. It depends what teams go how far, how big those fan bases are. It does have an impact, so they're harder to predict, the financial losses. The big losses for basketball, which will affect the NBA, is the NCAA March Madness being cancelled. That has lost 867.5 million, and that is just the TV and marketing rights that have been lost. That's nearly $1 billion wiped off the value of basketball at college level, which works out $17 million loss per college. That takes place in March Madness. That is a lot of money wiped off sports programs in North American universities. And the NBA, as well as other professional sports in North America, are obviously the collegiate system affects the draft system. Like the NFL will also be affected by this. Even though the NFL season has finished, when it comes to the draft, when it comes to player development, a few years down the line, the NCAA losing that much money just from a basketball tournament, you imagine if the ice hockey tournaments as well, American football, soccer, or as I would call football, tennis, golf, gymnastics, all the various college sports where colleges and universities have sports programs being cancelled. You can add to that. That's where the NBA is going to be massively affected going forward. The NCAA's losses from March Madness. Now, they can recoup some of that if they can play March Madness at some point this summer. If they cannot, that is a massive financial hit that will take several years to recover from. And it will also affect player development for the NBA, as well as other leagues and sports, again, for several years going forward. That's a lot of money. We've got some more big figures coming up. The NRL. Now, the losses that the NRL are approximating, they are smaller. However, it all depends on A, when they can restart the season, and B, if fans are in attendance. Now, they've already played 2 rounds of the NRL season, but instead of playing each other twice, they'll play each other once. Now, the NRL has come out and said their aim to get re-going again on the 28th of May, when they aim to restart. State of Origin is the big cradle of money for the NRL. It's their jewel in their crown. That gets a lot of the revenue back that they will lose. But they are still approximating, depending on if fans can be in attendance or behind closed doors or no season at all, anywhere between 100 and 500 million Australian dollars they lose. The problem that the NRL has found is some investigative journalists in Australia found that the retirement fund that the NRL has set up is worth 30 million. It's going to have 30 million Australian dollars in it. It only has 20. So $10 million the NRL has dipped its hand in and taken. So questions are now being asked by the club CEOs, the players, the fans, the media. Where's that money gone? Governance changes. That's something that's got to come out of this for the NRL is governance changes. It will also affect the salary cap going forward. The NBA is a better run league financially, so it's far better run. The salary cap will be affected. Not as much. The NRL salary cap will be massively impacted by this. Player salaries will definitely be going down for a few years to come until the league can recover. We may see less teams going forward as well. Clubs like Penrith have been very open and candid about their financial struggles. Not every team is on a level playing field, it seems. Governance at the NRL and of the national level at the Australian Rugby League Commission is being questioned, and we are going to have to see governance changes and how the sport is run in Australia. Now we move on to the NHL. Now, the NHL is an interesting one because the figures that I found are an average on a night. Bear in mind you've got 31 teams, plus you've got to work out how many home games each team has remaining to work out the actual losses the league is approximating on average it is facing. But on a given game night, per game, on average, this is how much the NHL is losing per night. On ticket sales alone, it is losing $1,312,000 per night. That's just on lost ticket sales. On food and drink, $215,000. On merchandise sales, $86,850. That's jerseys like what I'm wearing here. On sponsorship and board side advertising, so that's the ice side adverts you see for companies, it's $50,000 a night. And then for the car parks, it's $16,800. That's those people driving to the game rather than using public transport and paying a small car park fee of a few dollars here or there for a couple of hours and then off. Add that all together, it's about 1.6, just a shade under 1.6, $1.5 million, something along those lines, maybe a shade under per game. Now you have to look at the remaining schedule, and then you have to break it down per team as well, what each team is going to be losing, because some teams have got more games left than others at home, so that's how you can work out how much it's costing teams and the league as a whole. But that is still a lot of money. You times that by the remaining games, and then you divide that by each team. You give them a share of how much they're losing. It's a bit complicated, but the maths is there for you guys, the maths nerds, to break down the stats. It's still a lot of money. It works out at less than the NBA, equivalent to what the NRL is losing. NHL, NRL, and NBA all have playoffs as well. Now, the playoff losses cannot be calculated at this time. That is interesting. This is just regular season losses. Then we get to the English Premiership, and this is where it gets really interesting. Now, multiple figures have been given, and these are all approximate, and these are all what they're assuming worst-case scenario, depending on the source. I've gone roughly in the middle, because I've seen anywhere from 700 to 780 million in losses. I'm going at 750. That seems about right in what is going to be lost if the league cannot restart, if they void the season. That's the approximate loss we're looking at. Now, you break that down, very similar to the NHL, with where everything goes per night. You break it down, ticket sales, TV deals, player wages, merchandise sales, food and drink, and the other running costs. You break it down. Very similar to the NHL match night, just where the money they could make goes. Ticket sales, that's actually a surprisingly big chunk. The TV deal and the player wages, the losses, is where most of the losses is actually happening. Merchandise sales, most fans have bought their merchandise in the pre-season, but there's still those fans that want to buy a jersey or a scarf or a match day programme. So some merch sales, food and drink is massively marked up at Premier League grounds, as I have found out and my friends have found out. That's actually on a match day, rakes in quite a bit of money, very similar to the NHL at the second highest earner on the day. So they're losing out on that, plus the running costs of the club shop, of the food and drink concessions. Obviously the player wages as well, the running costs, the staffing costs. That is linked into the player wages, and this is where we're having a debate and the battle between the PFA and the clubs, the Premier League, and the EFL to a certain extent. And what we've seen is only 4 clubs in England and Scotland where the players and the clubs have agreed a wage deferral, which is what the players would rather have and the PFA would rather have. So we've seen Southampton and West Ham and Birmingham City in England and Celtic in Scotland come to an agreement on wage deferrals. Kilmarnock is different. I've done a video on that. They've had to furlough the players for now in the short term until the PFA in Scotland can come to an agreement with the Scottish Premiership, and also on a wider scale, the PFA in general comes to an agreement with all the clubs of the Scottish and English leagues where they can work out and thrash out a deal going forward. But only 4 clubs have sorted out the player wage debate individually of the PFA or the leagues. They've decided to do it on an individual club by club, player by player basis. At around 10% is the figure that is being thrown out there. But 750, that's £750 million could be lost by the Premier League. And again, questions are going to be asked, especially when it comes to player wages. Where has the money gone? This is the wealthiest football league in the world. Where has the money gone? The players are probably going to ask the clubs to open up their books fully, and the PFA are probably backing them in that, demanding to look at the running costs of the clubs, the financial health of the clubs. We know in the lower leagues clubs are facing going bust. We know that Bury went bust in August before this crisis even took hold. So questions are asked about the governance of the sport, not just in the Premier League, but across the board. And questions have been asked of club finances and are they being truly honest about how much they earn and how much they lose, and, where all the money is. That's it. But that's a look at 4 sports and 4 leagues. I could have looked at a whole host of sports and leagues. I'd go with these ones. A lot of figures are out there. Just type in coronavirus and coronavirus financial effects on sport. There are a few websites where stats nerds are actually breaking down the numbers that are readily available to come up with all this information for me to then digest for you guys. But you look at it, that is a lot of money that professional sports is losing, and that explains why leagues are so keen to get their seasons restarted, especially football, especially the NHL and NBA. They are looking at arena availability, but they are looking at playing behind closed doors. They will take some financial hit, and it will affect the salary cap going forward, but then the TV audience can bump that up a little bit. The NRL is the most at risk of the financial complications of the coronavirus as things currently stand, although the NRL has stated they are looking to restart the league on May 28th. So keep your eyes peeled on the NRL and what actually happens there. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Please place your thoughts below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.